but not least in our Everyday Inclusion DEI Thought Leader Panel Series. We started this series back in September. And I want to just talk about sort of why we even have this, why we've done this, because it is DEI work is already challenging. And the set of challenges that have been thrown at DEI leaders over the past 18 months is nothing short of extraordinary. It felt like, as we were prepping for this panel, we were saying it felt, feels like every 6 weeks, it feels like we have to pivot, and there's something new and there's something new again. And so we started this series because that's what we tend to do at Moxie. It's like we see a problem. All right, let's bring people together and figure out how we can solve that. And so this series was born. We started with healthcare, then we did banking and finance, technology, manufacturing, and last but not least, retail. So I am thrilled to be joined by this panel. I'm going to introduce them all. And as always, we've got Madeline Borkin here and I4CP. We really appreciated their partnership. They've been providing data insights to the entire series. So let me start with Crystal. So Crystal Andrews Banks is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director at Ulta Beauty. As a proven cultural transformation change agent with over 10 years of experience, she furthers Ulta's D&I efforts by identifying and formulating viable solutions to drive innovation. She drives the organization's D&I strategy, serves as the enterprise D&I consultant, and provides oversight to a myriad of diversity initiatives. Crystal's background includes stints in marketing and internal communications, which assist in her big picture ideology and creative approaches. She studied at St. John's University and received her MA in sociology and a BS in communication with a business minor, while also a member of the women's basketball team. Anyone that has been a student athlete or loved a student athlete or supported a student athlete, you know what a big deal that is. A sought after thought leader and speaker, she was recognized by Essence magazine as a revolutionary beauty industry executive and selected as one of Crain's Chicago business's notable executives in diversity, equity, and inclusion. She also serves as chair of the Retail Industry Leaders Association D&I Leadership Council and a board member of Girls in the Game. Previously, Crystal worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, KPMG, Bexalta, and Johnson Controls, where she added value to develop and strengthen their DEI agendas. Crystal, great to have you here.
Thank you, excited to be here.
Texana Reeves is Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion for Rite Aid. Rite Aid is a trusted everyday care connector that provides an array of whole being health products and services for the entire family through over 2,500 retail pharmacy locations. In her role, she's responsible for leading the development and execution of the DEI enterprise strategy, which is the enabler of the company's purpose to achieve whole health for life. Texana is a thought leader and a highly accomplished results-focused DEI professional with a solid history of envisioning and defining DEI strategic direction, engaging senior management and peers across all functions, and driving operational excellence and being a catalyst for change. Recognized by leaders as an expert in developing DEI management systems, Texana's had a progressive career working with large global Fortune 50 companies, such as Merck Pharmaceuticals. She's led DEI companies in different industries that are recognized as being in the forefront of DEI, such as Sodexo, and has provided subject matter expertise as a consultant to a number of organizations such as Gilead Sciences. She approaches her DEI work with passion and a commitment to achieve results, yet enjoys laughing and having fun achieving it. Texana, great to have you here.
My pleasure, really pleased to be here.
And last but not least, Michelle Marshall is head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for Puma North America, the first DEI leader with the company. In this role, Michelle oversees all diversity initiatives, programming, partnerships, diverse talent acquisition, recruitment strategy, ERGs, and partners with the reform team that focuses on Puma's social justice and advocacy work. Michelle has worked in the diversity space for over 10 years. Prior to joining Puma, the Puma Group, Michelle was Senior Director of Women's Leadership Initiatives for the United Way of Greater Atlanta. In this role, she was responsible for developing strategic programming, board development, volunteer management, and advocating for and providing resources toward United Way's initiative of improving child well-being for Metro Atlanta. Great to have you here, Michelle. Great to have all of you here. I want to give just a little bit of background on Madeline and the work that she's doing at I4CP, because then we're going to dive right into some of the data and this great conversation. So as I said, Madeline and I4CP have partnered with us on all 5 of these panels. And Madeline is VP of Membership Development. And importantly for this conversation, executive sponsor for the I4CP Chief Diversity Officer Board. Madeline is a passionate advocate for disability rights, employment equity, and workforce equality. She has a broad background in human resources, including talent acquisition, learning and development, employee assessments and surveys, and diversity and inclusion. She dedicates much of her time as a community volunteer and speaker for I4CP member companies and nonprofit organizations, such as Best Buddies International, Junior Achievement, Youth Frontiers, and Partners in Policymaking. Madeline and I4CP, again, have partnered with us to share really their human capital insights. And we got to give a shout out to Madeline because she's actually on vacation. She's in Cabo. We told her that we wanted the beach behind her, but so Madeline, super appreciate you coming off vacation to have this final conversation. Let's dig in. I actually just read something this morning that was fascinating, particular to the retail industry around the Great Resignation and talent shortages and the full-on war for talent that is taking place right now. So would love for you to share some of those insights with us, Madeline, what you're all seeing at I4CP and the research you're doing.
Thank you so much, Mo. I was going to have the beach as the background, but I was afraid I was going to lose internet connection. As always, it's an absolute pleasure to share practices and learn from such a great group of brilliant minds like Crystal and Texana and Michelle, and of course you. I had so much fun over the weekend. I was actually going through the Everyday Inclusion app and learned some really interesting things. I feel like every day I learn something new. I'm really excited to share some of the I4CP research insights with you all today. Just to set the stage, as some of you may already know, I4CP discovers the people practices of high performance organizations. So what we're doing is we are really looking at what are high performance organizations doing differently than low performance organizations with their people practices. And 99% of the time, there's always a big difference. And so we define high performance organizations as those organizations consistently outperform their competitors over a 5-year period of time in revenue, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. We also call out next practices, and these are some of those approaches that correlate to market performance, but that few companies are actively using. And I'm really excited with the panel of folks that clearly have some next practices. We're consistently pulsing HR and business leaders across the globe, and we're looking at some of the most critical social, political, and business issues affecting our workforces. We continue to study the future of work. So today, what I'm going to do is share some of those insights that address current issues with a future lens. Before I do that, I wanted to share a little bit. I was reading an article. It was dated the end of September. It was through HRO Today. It was a Microsoft study where they cited that almost half of Americans expect to look for a new job as the pandemic continues. According to Microsoft, and it's called the 2021 Work Trend Index Report, I highly recommend taking a look at it. 41% of the global workforce is likely to consider leaving their current employer within the next year. And that number jumps to 54% when considering Generation Z alone. Similarly, 46% of employees are planning to make a major pivot or career transition. And this truly impacts the retail industry at majorly. So what does that really mean? Severe labor shortages and a harsh new reality for employers just in general, a mass exodus of employees not hitting every industry equally. And so, as I mentioned, it really impacts retail, hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing sectors as well. But retail is seeing one of the highest attritions due to fatigue and burnout. Employees in all these sectors are deciding to change industries due to burnout. Frontline workers in retail don't feel safe anymore in these roles. And many now have an opportunity to also work from home. And now there's even a wage war. People are willing to leave for a competitor for a minimal wage, or even just something as simple as a schedule change. So nearly 1 in 5 Microsoft survey respondents say their employer doesn't care about their work-life balance. Over half, or 54%, feel overworked, and 39% feel exhausted. Hence the reason why I'm on vacation too. According to I4CP research, we conducted a global talent exodus study, and the research is showing that it's costing companies, especially retailers, a significant impact to the bottom line. Regarding one of the questions that we asked regarding potential post-pandemic attrition, when we asked which employee groups in terms of roles that your organization is most concerned about losing talent from, 64% said they were concerned with frontline, customer-facing, and early career recent hires. Scary. My husband's in the restaurant industry, so I have to hear about it every single day. The data is also showing that over 50% of respondents have a major concern with losing talent with people in underrepresented groups, elder caregivers, and parents with school-aged children. And so I recall reading a New York Times article where a retail employee said, I don't need you to take care of my child. I just need you to help me take care of my child. And so clearly these insights are painting a very grim picture for retail employers. So they will need to think and act differently.
Well,
and so I'd love to hear from the panelists as to what they're thinking.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. Just take one of those stats and they could blow you over, right? And then the compounding of all of those stats. So I'd love to hear, we're talking about truly, it's a word that's been used this past year because I think it's the only time it's ever been appropriate. Actually, it's unprecedented, right? Mm-hmm. The talent war is truly unprecedented. And I'm curious what y'all are doing at Puma around attracting and retaining talent. Michelle, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. And as we all know, and just got through discussing, what is this month? The months are going by so fast. November 2021 looks a lot different than November 2019. People had time to sit at home and really do some deep reflection and figure out what it was that they needed and wanted. And we understand that here at Puma. Even though we just opened a beautiful new headquarters space, we came back into our space on hybrid schedules so we can ensure that our employees still had that sense of flexibility where they can still come in and collaborate with their colleagues and their teammates, because we are a creative company. We have fashion designers and a lot of different creative roles, but also giving them that space and flexibility to still have some time at home for those who feel like they're more productive at home. In terms of the retail space, we have been working really hard to roll out different trainings and opportunities for our retail employees around managing stress. Because even though a lot of us got to work from home for the last year, they were on the front lines. They were dealing with having to go into work and people coming in the door not wearing a mask and whatever other situations they had to navigate through while they were still out there working. So we've been really focused on making sure those leaders have some opportunities around managing stress. I know me, like the others on the call, probably have had some challenges trying to figure out how to really provide some support and resources for all the retail employees because they're on the sales floor all day. So you can't always take them away from the sales floor for them to participate in those trainings. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying to figure out how to meet the needs of all those employees. Something else that we've been doing within the Puma environment within our corporate office recently, because we have a beautiful space and a rooftop area, we had yoga classes for any employees that wanted to come in a little early just to relieve and relax before they started their work day. We made sure we had a world-class gym incorporated, and we're going to have trainers and different instructors coming into that gym periodically just to offer employees different options and opportunities for them to be able to decompress and really prioritize their health. And one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of keeping those employees and retaining those employees, we are really discussing a numerous amount of mentorship and development type programs that we can implement and roll out next year that not only impact those employees that are seen as high potential, but also to give opportunities to those employees that's within our retail workforce so they can, we can create a pipeline from retail to our corporate and opportunities as well.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, Michelle. They're in our manufacturing panel, they're doing something similar with manufacturing floor to management where they're partnering up. You know, one of the tips that we have in the app is talking about a person's first day, right? And first week and first month, and how it's like that first day of walking into anything new. So I love that idea of the mentors as well, because you're bridging them over that gap of those scary first days and how do we do things, and I don't know anybody here, and instead it's like, no, actually here is somebody for you. Because you know, we've all heard the stories and experienced the stories of somebody, you go through the recruiting, you get them in the door, they have a rotten first day and they never show up again. So love that. Texana, jump in.
Well, I wanted to add, you know, and build off of what both you and Michelle was talking about, because it is really, really challenging time for retail. And of course, compensation right now is a huge challenge. Being able to actually ensure around benefits and career pathing are areas that we're doubling down on in terms of efforts. But we've also decided that, for example, is that that's not just enough, particularly in terms of winning. We're just not going to win just by in terms of compensation and by benefits, but around really focusing on the associate experience. In addition of being able to look at it from a DE&I perspective is around our commitment that we're making around diversity, equity, inclusion, around valuing the lived experiences, the ability to bring your whole self to work, for our supervisors, our people managers to listen, to understand. How are we ensuring that we're adding more accountability to our people managers to create that environment that we can be able to have that workplace that our associates want to stay, that they really enjoy? And so that's an area that we're wanting to be able to, again, from a D&I perspective, is to focus around that associate experience, being able to include inclusion nudges in the various talent processes, particularly around performance management and talent assessment, in order to mitigate bias. So that's a couple of things I think about as well in terms of again, impacting that associate experience.
I love the intentionality and the accountability that it sounds like you're weaving in there. Crystal, how about at Ulta? How are you winning this war for talent?
So I would agree with everything that Michelle and Texana said. And for like a tactical example, you know, for us, it's it's really thinking about like our culture and making sure that people feel like they're part of the Ulta Beauty family, and that they could, regardless of their identity or appearance, they could realize their full career potential. So a lot of it, I mean, you can have the most amazing recruiting strategy and retention strategy and all the strategies, right? But if people aren't feeling the love, if they don't feel like they're being seen, heard, or like valued, they are on Indeed later that day. So one thing that we've been, really thoughtful about is how do we change behaviors? And one of the campaigns that we did recently was a campaign called Stronger Together. So we know it takes 21 days to build a habit. So how do we make inclusion and inclusive behaviors, just how we interact with one another, and specifically for our retail employees or retail associates, how they interact with the guest. So we used a little bit of gamification. We used the voices of our leaders and our CEO and COO to really kind of champion this larger than life campaign that was not just necessarily a corporate play, but it was truly across the entire enterprise. So we got our retail stores involved. We have about 1,300. We got our 6 distribution centers involved and our folks at corporate. And it was really an opportunity for everyone for those 21 days to really be intentional and purposeful of how they show up within the workplace. So it has been an amazing campaign that was really successful for us, and looking to, have those additional like touch points again to make inclusion and just make people feel like they belong.
Yeah, that consistency too, right? Like and for your folks to really feel like you're investing in them. I'm curious because I know one of the things that has been talked about a lot is people wanting to go to a place where the company's purpose matches their own purpose. And I'm wondering if any of the three of you have done anything interesting in that regard. That's from sort of the pure recruiting standpoint, and then how do you keep talking about why y'all do what you do? And I know I'm throwing this one very off the cuff, so I don't know actually if that's something that you've been strategic about, or that's been a more organic approach.
Well, one way in which we've been trying to approach that is really through our focus on Heritage and History Months. In terms of being able to really celebrate, recognize, and educate our associates around various different affinity areas. So for example, this month is Native American Heritage Month. And so therefore what we're doing is that we actually are very intentional to provide educational resources that we curated specifically for our associates. We also host different events that again focuses on specifically that particular group, our Native and Indigenous associates, and being able to have them, such a theme was culture and health and the Native experience. And so by being able to actually make those that oftentimes don't feel as though they're being seen or heard, as well as we know that within our stores is that where we're located is in the neighborhoods, and which we have in terms of in this month with Native American, in terms of around the states that we're located are actually have concentrations of Native American customers. And so how do we interact, et cetera? So by being able to focus in on some of their specific needs are enabling us to be able to be more purposeful. And again, live that D&I commitment that I was talking about the lived experience, about being able to ensure that we are absolutely listening to each other and understanding, and then also with our customers.
I love that thread.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal or Michelle, it looks like you both are about to jump in.
I think Michelle was on deck first, so I'll go after Michelle.
No, you're fine either way. No, I was just gonna touch on also, it was mentioned in my bio about a reform platform. I know the Gen Z and millennials is very important. The company is and not just talking the talk, but walking the walk when it comes to everything they're doing around advocacy and social justice. One thing I have been working hard on is ensuring that our employees are well aware of some of the great partnerships that we have in the community. We have partnerships through our Reform platform with foundations like the Trayvon Martin Foundation, with the ACLU, with the Sean Carter Foundation and Reform Alliance, and also the Trevor Project, just to name a few. So it's not just enough for us just to write a check with these organizations. We're ensuring that we are talking through volunteerism opportunities so our employees can really see and feel the work of what these organizations are doing within the community. Also, we're bringing in our partners like the ACLU to have discussions with our employees around knowing your rights around protesting and your voters' rights. We're making sure that we're having a series of conversations around something called Conversations on Reform that we do quarterly. We basically bring in those people that are in the music, sports, and entertainment industry, but are also activists, and to talk about their platforms and the things that they care about. And another thing I want to add to that is, although we're early in our journey of having started and launched our employee resource groups last year, it could not have been more timely for our employee resource groups to start being rolled out last year, because for the first time, I think, in our company's history, I had employees coming to our HR team stating that the employee groups were timely for them because they were able to connect and meet employees across the country that they haven't had the opportunity to interact with in all their years of working with the company. So it was a way for us to just keep our employees connected. So as we're recruiting new talent, it's important for them to see themselves reflected within the company, and to also know coming in the door, they automatically have a safe space of employees who look like them, that are who's responsible for putting activities and initiatives in place to ensure that they have a great experience as a Puma employee.
Oh my gosh, y'all are covering off on so much. Crystal, jump in here.
Yeah, no worries. So I mean, I love what Texana and Michelle said, and just to add to that, I think it's important to I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this, to have some type of transparency, right? So we all understand that we're on a journey of understanding and awareness, not only as an organization, but also as individuals. So all of the amazing examples that Michelle and Texana, provided, I think it's really important for companies to think strategically of like, how do you bring your associates along the journey with you? So what are those communication channels or vehicles that you're leveraging? But also too, I mean, being in retail, we're guest facing, right? So how are we bringing our guests or our consumers along the journey with us? So for us, some of the things that we've been really intentional about is and we refer to them as kind of key D&I moments in time. So the moments that matter to our associates and guests based on their identity, and other diversity dimensions. So we actually have partnerships with our colleagues in marketing as well as merchandising. So when we look at our annual calendar, okay, what moments are we only doing internal programming? What are those moments that it's a 360 approach? So our guests will fill it in our stores or our .com presence, or even in our mailers that hopefully everyone subscribes to and gets in their mailbox. So just thinking about like, how do you, because we're all doing amazing work, but the thing is, if we're just doing amazing work and like no one hears about it, then
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. No, oh my gosh, y'all. So one of the things, Michelle, that you touched on a little bit was wellness and well-being and mental health. And there has, right, we know we're in a mental health crisis. We were in a mental health crisis before COVID, before racial justice, right? Was really front and center, and that's not going away. Madeline, you're on vacation, and we were having a conversation with the Moxie team, how we were saying it's harder to recharge, right? It feels like collectively everybody's batteries are flashing red, and it to get back to that. So Madeline, I know you all have done some research and are looking at some of the insights around mental health, wellness, well-being. I'd love for you to share some of those and then just have a conversation, because I think, and I'll say this, I'm thrilled that we're finally talking about mental health in organizations. I saw a thing that was comparing, am I a Gen Xer? I'm a Gen Xer. Feels like such a long Like at some point in time, you start to lose that title, right? So I'm a Gen Xer, and it was two Gen Xers talking, and it was one of the women was like whispering, like, "Did you know so and so's in therapy?" And then there was the two millennials who were like, "My therapist said," right? They're standing in the coffee shop. So share, Madeline, some of these insights, and then I'd love to hear, I'd love that there's yoga on site, right? That there's different things happening in Puma, but everything that y'all are doing around this.
Yeah. So to cope with a lot of these labor trends, organizations, across all industries, but especially retail, will kind of need to rethink that employer value proposition or risk losing valuable talent. And so I just want to be clear that yes, I am on vacation. However, this topic and this panel is rejuvenating for me personally. So I want to make that very clear. And also to reinforce what Rite Aid, what Ulta, and what Puma said. So if I think about what you all said, I heard compensation is an issue. It is, according to the research, number one or number two, along with, I heard flexibility and well-being for attracting talent. In addition, employees are also expressing some dissatisfaction with work projects, their managers' lack of options, and then lack of recognition. So this really points to a lot of different areas. And so when we looked at the research to see what are some of those drivers, it is that burnout that we talked about. It's the lack of advancement opportunities, compensation, requirement that employees return to a workplace after working remotely, also concerns with safety, and then lack of continuous development. But when I look at the holistic well-being research, where high performance organizations, I4CP's holistic well-being research, high performance organizations, they embrace that whole person approach. And so they're looking at employee well-being. They're widening that focus beyond that physical and mental health. And so when you think about some of these other areas that I'll touch upon, how it can actually impact your physical and mental health, and also create a more inclusive picture. And so I4CP research has shown that leading organizations looking at well-being in a holistic manner, they're looking at 6 key areas. They're looking at that physical health, emotional, mental health, but then financial health, community involvement, career health, social and relational. Employee well-being, it's taken that center stage since the pandemic and all of the other areas that we faced in life. But as trying as this time is going to be, it's going to continue to be this way. And so it shows a tremendous opportunity for employers across all industries to improve upon some of your existing programs, despite kind of the massive investment in employee well-being. So it isn't about just completely starting new things. Most organizations, they don't perceive their programs to be very effective. Fewer than half, actually, in our research show that those surveyed gave high ratings to the effectiveness of their programs across all of those 6 holistic well-being elements. While 45% of high-performance organizations report that their workers enjoy very high levels of well-being, just 13% of low-performing organizations said the same. So you can see that difference between high performance versus low performance. And the research is also showing that they're embracing such an approach that has a huge impact, not only on performance, but innovation and creativity. Companies have also, shown healthier workforces, lower benefits costs, better attraction and retention of talent, improved productivity, less absenteeism, overall better financial performance. And then the top performers are also 7 times more likely to report that increased level of innovation and creativity. So when I hear you, Michelle, talking about, the designers at the workplace, I imagine that with all the well-being practices that you're implementing, I'm sure it's making a huge impact. A group of CHROs gathered together and discussed well-being last month on an I4CP platform, and they talked about EAP communications. They're primarily shared via email campaigns and in-store office posters, to a lesser extent, some text messaging and digital apps. Other practices are communication channels, including radio stations and manager EAP handouts. Another emerging best practice is to create dedicated employee well-being roles to monitor and support employee well-being. So we see this right now at VF Corporation, developing networks of well-being ambassadors and champions within the organization. I think leveraging your ERGs is a great opportunity as well. Developing and partnering with dedicated mental health and well-being ERGs, like at VF Corp, it was Mind Matter. Invest in holistic well-being next practices. Some of those career and the community, getting employees involved in the community, the social and relational well-being will certainly support. Another practice is rethinking some of your leave pay policies and adding some vaccination stipulations. And that's a whole nother, can of worms that we definitely need to address. And the issues around that are almost paralyzing to organizations as things change literally on a daily basis. Several retailers are also, researching accommodation plans for medical and religious issues. And then retailers like Nordstrom are kind of rethinking their HR operating model, kind of to address how to be more sustainable and have an area of that operating model to serve and support crisis management, because I don't think it's going to be exclusive to what's happened in the last 2 years. I think we need to go well beyond that. So lots of great practices. I encourage everyone to think about holistic well-being through the lens of those 6 different areas to make a huge impact on the effectiveness of your programs, as well as an impact to each individual need of every employee.
Well, and I think, I'd love to hear, Crystal, what y'all are doing at Ulta in this regard, because it's not something we can ignore, nor should we. And again, this is one of those things that I'm glad it's gotten pushed to the forefront, where, whether you want to or not, you're doing it. And I know the approach that you've all taken at Ulta is to really lean into this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I appreciated, Madeline, all the different kind of tactics and resources that you highlighted, because I would say, for us, again, just like we're on a DE&I journey, we're on a DE&I journey. We're on the mental health and awareness journey as well. So some of the things that we've done, in particularly from a corporate perspective, every corporate employee has access to Headspace, which is an app that is phenomenal and provides a lot of different tools and resources, depending on what you're looking on for that particular day or for just your lifestyle, if you will. Another thing that we've done, particularly with our store teams, and this actually was a tip from Michelle, so I have to always give Michelle a shout out for introducing me to an organization called Hill House, which is based in Brooklyn, New York, and they're really focused on holistic health and wellness. So our relationship began with Hill House last year. Given all of the racial reckoning and trauma that was happening, we really wanted to create a safe space with a mental health care provider, that we could just have some honest conversation, safe space to talk about how do we overcome some of the feelings and emotions that associates were facing. And so it was really successful. And now I feel like we are attached at the hip with Hill House, and what that looks like, particularly even for our retail staff. And this is one of the tactics that you mentioned, Madeline, is how do you just make this normalized in like your everyday kind of like interaction. So we've tried to find moments where we could stick in some mental health opportunities. So for instance, I know a lot of us get ready for holiday and we have those big leadership meetings. So we actually partnered with Hill House to do a mental health workshop where it was really about with the stress of holiday. I mean, holiday is always super stressful, but add on, we're still in a global pandemic. We have labor shortages, all of the things like how can our leaders take care of themselves? Because you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can, help others. And then how can they support others as well? So it's been it was really successful. So now we are doing kind of quarterly mental health conversations, ranging from, how do you cultivate intentions to navigating the unknown, kind of a serenity strategy, to really thinking about, breaking the mental myths of our personal stories. So again, we're kind of doubling down on just making those resources and workshops available for everyone within the enterprise.
Well, and I'm guessing there's great things happening at Rite Aid and at Puma as well, but I want to get us to our next question, because I think it is so relevant to everything that we've talked about. And that to this point, it's like this shifting role of DEI. I've been doing this work my career and seeing the acceleration over the last 18 months of some organizations had DEI centered, but a lot of them, it was sort of this thing, right? It was this thing off to the side, or there wasn't even a role, or there wasn't even a function, and it certainly wasn't a part of strategy. And Texana, I know that you've done this across multiple industries, right? Big, small. How have you seen the role of DEI shift, let's say from 2 years ago to today?
Okay. Well, yeah, there was a monumental shift, I believe, in terms of from a D&I practitioner perspective in the last 2 years, in particular, because a really pivotal point, I think, for the world was, of course, with the George Floyd situation. And just to kind of just back up a little bit in terms of what has happened in the last 2.5 years or so, is around with the profession is that it has been evolving, from compliance, focusing on EEO affirmative action, to representation in reference to ensuring that we were reflective of our customers and the labor market with diversity, as well as also looking at doubling down as D&I professionals around belonging, in terms of ensuring that we absolutely enabled our associates to feel like that they were a part. And we added that, with diversity, we added that I in terms of around inclusion and what inclusion meant in terms of being able to be more innovative, and that we also took those insights for our consumers. But with George Floyd situation, the murder of George Floyd, is that it was an awakening in terms of the fact of, as we had added the E to D&I around equity, is that it really magnified inequities. And not just inequities in the workplace, but the inequities in society, and how it was so much different in terms of the fact of the lived experiences of some of our associates, particularly if I stayed, because we know also with Asians in terms of the Asian hate crimes and so on and so forth, the lived experience of our various different associates really were magnified as being different. And so when we thought about equity in terms of thinking in reference, it magnified the point of, we can't just give everybody the same thing and expect it to get the same type of outcomes, that we really needed to be able to look at the unique needs of these various different groups as to what we needed to do to have more equitable practices and policies. But in addition, and it really relates to what Michelle's doing as well in terms of her focus, and that is the social side of it. With what happened around the social unrest and these issues that we're raising, again, we can even add in a gender in terms of with the Me Too movement coming in, et cetera. all of this kind of came to the head whenever we also were all left at home with COVID and had to think about all of these different things. And so with that is that I really think in reference to the evolving role around DE&I has been more of being able to ensure that we're able to pivot and to focus in on what can we do in order to elevate and raise the not just awareness, but around the change in behaviors that allows everyone to make it more of a practice of how we treat people, and to really shift this away from awareness to, again, more around behaviors. And I see this happening in terms of change is the demand from the board around being able to have more accountability. And what that's stating is that it's not so much of they're saying what you have to specifically do, but that you have to decide what you're going to do and to show proof that you're doing it. and the other thing is that from investors and consumers and our employees, our associates are not allowing us just to have lip service anymore. They are absolutely expecting to be able to see how does this show up within my own. And that's why, again, what we're doing at Rite Aid is really wanting to focus on the associate experience. And we use the analogy, in fact, our CEO, Hayward Donegan, used that same analogy with the airlines. Let's put our oxygen mask on first, and let's really take care of ourselves, even though we will continue within our neighborhoods and doing our outreach and around vaccine equity, so on and so forth, and doing those things that we need to do within our neighborhoods and our communities. But we do need to make sure that our external voice is matching our internal behaviors.
Yeah, I love, it's a little bit like the alphabet soup. If you watch, right, where it was diversity, then it was diversity and inclusion. Then some people were adding diversity, inclusion, belonging, then equity, right? Then
Yes.
It's like that tracks the evolution of this work, and it's really central, right? And really intentional. And, we say there's nowhere to hide anymore. Right? So Michelle, how have you seen this shift? And in particular, sort of Puma's approach?
Sure. So years ago, when I first jumped in the journey of the D&I track, it was always important work to the leaders and the company, but you kind of sat on the side doing your thing, playing the cultural moments, planning the learning and development opportunities for employees. But the way it really shifted in the last 2 years since last year, it's kind of like the Looney Tunes cartoon. You see the little rabbit or little animal struggling with the little spotlight to turn it on whoever's on stage. That's what happened with D&I practitioners. All of a sudden we were on center stage and everyone wanted to get a piece of our time, get on our calendar. And I'm ecstatic about that. I'm ecstatic about the fact that now organizations are realizing the importance of this role and what it means for their employees, what it means to the bottom line, what it means to their customers, and just what it means on their reputation as a company overall. The thing that's changed and shifted for me working for a global company is in years past, global orgs and global departments, teams would talk about diversity, but they really didn't talk about the race aspect of diversity. But now I'm seeing the shift where even though they still don't track that data, they're moving in that direction where they want to talk more about those social justice issues. They want to talk more about how can we make this an inclusive organization for our Black employees in Europe or our Black employees in Latin America. And that's an exciting change. It's something that we're going to definitely work through, being that we don't know what the representation is within the staffs of those global teams. But another thing I will also say is that, like I mentioned, being at the center of everything, I always say that if you're serious about D&I, you want to incorporate it into the fabric of your company. It's not just a box over here that you're checking as you're going about business on a day-to-day basis. When you're talking about every aspect of the organization, whether it be sustainability, marketing, you name it, D&I should have a piece of what you're talking about, a major portion of that conversation, to ensure that you're serious about taking that D&I journey. And one last thing I will say, Texana, she hit on so many great points. The equity piece is about intentionality. Okay, we're diverse, we're inclusive, but what are you doing? What are you putting? What's groundwork are you laying to really ensure that you're serious about ensuring that all employees have a sense of belonging and feel like they're a part of the Puma family?
I love that. And, you know, one of the things that we haven't touched on, and we're not going to have time to get into it, but, you know, we've talked about Black employees, we've talked about Asian. I think it's really important, some of the inequities and some of the experience of people with disabilities who were so impacted by COVID. And we're literally seeing life or death, and how their organizations were handling that was really about, do you actually care about whether I survive this thing or not? So I think that, you know, looking at some equity and practices around that community is really an extraordinary opportunity right now. Crystal, let's do a crystal ball. And it's 3 to 5 years from now. What do you hope for DEI? What do you if you could, that crystal ball, but then you also got to say, here's some fairy dust and it's the way I want it to be. What do you hope for?
So I hope for it all. And I hope to figure out the answer to solve DEI so I can be in Cabo like Madeline. But in the interim, what I hope for is that, you know, this work continues to evolve. And I think Michelle hit it on the nail that, you know, for such a long time, it was really just kind of like an HR thing, right? But now we are truly business partners. So I just want us to see us to continue to have a seat at the table as we think about, you know, our organizations and this work. And it's really just how we do business. And this just is a component of that. I think particularly, you know, being a retailer and being, you know, guest facing, we want and I think I can speak for everyone on the panel, right? We want our guests to feel welcome, and that they can complete, for us, it's, you know, their entire beauty regimen. For, you know, Puma, it's, you know, all of their athletic, getting themselves ready from an athletic perspective. And then Texana, I mean, you know, the convenience and the pharmacy. So I mean, how do we just make sure that our guests and consumers can get service the way that they would like to, and feel, again, seen, heard, and valued, and that they are more than just kind of a dollar. They're actually a human, and D&I is all about human connection. So how do we kind of connect the dots where we work, live, and do business?
I love that. And again, sort of this woven into everything, right? That we talk a lot about the ripple effect. And Crystal, you were just talking about the ripple effect, right? When you all get this right, how that impacts, right, people that are experiencing your products, your brands, right? That they're seen as human, not just dollar signs. I love that. Texana, what do you hope for?
Well, I hope to have everyone within the organization feel like that they are a DE&I practitioner, that they are actually showing the behaviors that indicate that we truly are one organization, and that they're actually valuing each other and leveraging everyone's expertise in order to be able to meet our mission to do whole health for life. But one thing I also just think about in terms of the direction of the profession, that now that it does have more of a focus on social issues, I think that there's going to be pressure on business to do more involvement in social issues. And even as D&I professionals, I believe that we're going to be asked to have more of a closer alliance with our government affairs colleagues, and to even consider having in our own teams expertise that would be associated around some of the around government affairs and that type of thing. Because our Generation Z and what COVID has done, I believe, this is just, my opinion, in terms of the fact of it's just given us a different outlook around life.
Mhm.
And the lines between work and life or home, especially since now we're like with Rod 8, we're remote first now for our corporate office. We are working out of our homes. There's not that you're going into the office. I'm walking 2 minutes to my home office room, And so these social issues, I just think, are just going to end up actually being more important as we move on. And we'll need to be able to start to sharpen our skills around those.
Social change is really happening through business now, right? It's the
Mhm.
driver. So Michelle, anything that you want to add? And then, I've got one last question for y'all. Mute.
I hit mute. So I would say, in terms of the future and what I would love to see, I want employees to stay empowered. I heard some employees saying the other day, we only have but so much time before this D&I train ends. And I was like, I would love to counter you on that. And they asked me why, and I said, because as long as you're keeping the foot on the gas and you keep doing what you did last year, then this train won't end. It has to keep moving forward because they can't ignore you if employees are staying active in this journey, if they're voicing their concerns, if they're really telling leaders what it is that they need to thrive within their environment. And one thing I would love to see is that D&I practitioners across various industries are equipped with the resources that they truly need to really do this work. That this fit, and I know it's different for every company, but I hope this position ends up being a natural part of the C-suite across the board in all industries, because if it's important and a priority for all the different industries, then it's important that that D&I leader have a seat at the C-suite table, so they can be at top of mind when it comes to all the things that the organization is trying to accomplish.
I love it. I love it. Okay, y'all, we have just a couple minutes left. I would love for you to leave me with one last truth bomb as it relates to DEI in retail. And Madeline, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so I changed my truth bomb, I think like about 30 times. So I think throughout this call, but I'm going to go with the traditional definition of well-being. And so my truth is the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy. So I'm going to put on my mask first. And then each of those topic areas, comfortable, healthy, and happy, are pretty meaty. And so I'm going to put my mask on first. I want to make sure everyone around me at work and in the community at home is comfortable, healthy, or happy. And what Michelle and Texana and Crystal said, I am definitely going to put my foot on the gas to make sure I keep it going.
Excellent. Texana, how about you?
Well, in the spirit of Madeline at the beach, is that I'm going to say is that let's make lemonade out of the lemons in terms of really leveraging D&I to provide solutions for our organization. And that for caring for people is a winning proposition.
Absolutely. Michelle.
Oh, I was sitting here trying to think about my truth bomb. But I would like to say, let's remove the stigma out of thinking that self-care and self-prioritization is being selfish. Let's ensure that we're putting selves at top of mind and encouraging our employees from the retail to the corporate space to prioritize their self-care and their mindfulness practices.
Love that. All right, Crystal, take us home.
I know, it's like the pressure. Okay, so I would say be the change that you want to see, right? So it starts with you, and you making a choice of how do you want to show up and how do you want to influence your organization. And then not only that, but what are you going to do about it, right? So it's one thing to kind of talk about the opportunities, the challenges, what have you, but it's like another thing to put like your pedal to the metal to actually do something about it.
Y'all, I'm filled with gratitude. I can't wait to go back and watch this one again and again and again. You shared so much brilliance. And I'm leaving feeling put my mask on, but inspired that there's that knowing that there are folks like you doing this work. And again, the ripple effect and the impact. We say at Moxie, right? Everyday inclusion, that it's the choices that we make all day long. And that to get out there and do the next right thing. So I knew that this panel was not least, although you were last. Thank you, everybody. Huge gratitude for being a part of the Everyday Inclusion community. When we all link arms, when we're all sharing, when we're all staying on the journey together with our foot on the gas, good things will happen. So thanks, everybody. Do the next right thing.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you all.